Charlie Sheen. At one point, Charlie Sheen was untouchable. 2.5 Men made him the highest-paid actor on television, earning over $1 million an episode. He had everything: fame, money, legacy, and total control over a hit show. But then, everything unraveled. His off-screen chaos started making more headlines than the series itself. The drinking, the drugs, the bizarre interviews about tiger blood and winning, it all became a spectacle. He started attacking his showrunner, producers, even his co-stars. Eventually, CBS fired him, and that was it. He tried to come back with anger management, but the magic was gone. The charm that once made him a fan favorite had turned into a punchline. Charlie Sheen didn't fade quietly. He exploded in public, and his career never recovered from the blast. Katherine Heigl. Katherine Heigl was everywhere in the late 2000s. She was the breakout star of Grey's Anatomy and the face of hit romantic comedies like 27 Dresses and Knocked Up. She had the charisma, the timing, and the box office numbers to be Hollywood's next leading woman. But then, she started burning bridges. First, she criticized Knocked Up, calling it sexist, the same film that made her a star. Then she publicly withdrew herself from Emmy consideration for Grey's Anatomy, saying the writing didn't deserve it. That was the moment things turned. Hollywood didn't forget. Word spread that she was difficult, and roles started drying up. The big romantic leads disappeared, replaced by smaller projects that went nowhere. Even when she tried to pivot back to television, the momentum was gone. Heigl didn't fall because of a scandal. She fell because she couldn't stop talking when silence would have saved her career. Michael Richards. Michael Richards had already made history. As Kramer on Seinfeld, he created one of the most recognizable characters in TV history, a physical comedy masterclass that earned him 3 Emmys. After the show ended, he should have had his pick of projects. Instead, he disappeared from the spotlight until 2006, when everything went off the rails. During a comedy set, Richards lashed out at hecklers, shouting racial slurs in a moment caught on video. The footage spread like wildfire, and the backlash was instant. Apologies came fast, but the damage was done. He went from beloved sitcom icon to symbol of a career-ending outburst. Hollywood never gave him another real chance. He had built a reputation on likability and timing, and lost it all in one moment he couldn't take back. Isaiah Washington. Isaiah Washington was on top of the world when Grey's Anatomy became a phenomenon. His character, Dr. Preston Burke, was central to the show, complex, stoic, and endlessly watchable. He had the kind of role that could anchor a long, respected career on television. But behind the scenes, things were unraveling. Reports surfaced of explosive on-set arguments, and then came the controversy, a homophobic slur directed at a co-star that spread through every outlet imaginable. A BC fired him at the height of the show's success, and just like that, his momentum vanished. He tried to rebuild with smaller projects and guest roles, but the industry had moved on. Washington had all the tools to be a long-term TV star, but his own temper and one word ended it. Roseanne Barr. Roseanne Barr didn't just star in a hit show, she was the show. Her sitcom broke ground for blue-collar families and dominated ratings in the 90s. When Roseanne returned decades later, the reboot was an instant success, pulling in tens of millions of viewers. It looked like the perfect comeback story. Then came one tweet, a racist comment that detonated everything overnight. ABC canceled the show immediately and removed her name from the series that she created. The network even continued it without her. Retitled as The Conners, Roseanne went from a legendary comeback to a career obituary in less than 24 hours. She wasn't taken down by bad ratings or fading relevance. She torched it herself with one post. Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett was a breakout star on Empire, one of the most popular shows on television. He had talent, charisma, and a message that resonated. His career was on an upward trajectory, until it wasn't. In 2019, he claimed to have been the victim of a hate crime in Chicago. But as police investigated, the story started falling apart. Authorities accused him of staging the attack himself. He was arrested, charged, and convicted of filing a false report. The fallout was instant. Fox cut ties, Hollywood distanced itself, and his name became synonymous with scandal. Smollett's fall wasn't gradual, it was immediate and public. He had the kind of role that could have defined his generation of TV actors, but the moment turned him from rising star to cautionary tale overnight. Gina Carano. Gina Carano had one of the fastest rises in modern TV. A former MMA fighter turned actress, she brought raw presence to The Mandalorian. Fans loved her as Cara Dune, tough, grounded, and believable. Disney clearly saw potential. There were even talks of a spin-off. But just as her career was about to hit hyperspace, she hit send. A series of controversial social media posts, political comments, misinformation, and comparisons that crossed the line set off a firestorm. Within days, Lucasfilm cut ties. Her agency dropped her. The spin-off was canceled before it began. Carano went from part of the Star Wars universe to exiled from it overnight. It wasn't a failed audition or bad performance that ended her run. It was her posts. Thomas Gibson. Thomas Gibson was the quiet anchor of Criminal Minds, a steady, dependable lead on one of network TV's biggest shows. For over a decade, he was the face of the series, directing episodes and defining its tone. But off-camera, things weren't as controlled. Reports of temper issues began surfacing, then came the breaking point. An on-set altercation with a producer that ended with Gibson being fired. It was a shocking move for a show that had built itself around him. Afterward, he faded from major roles completely. The reputation stuck, talented but volatile. Gibson had a chance to ride Criminal Minds into TV legend territory, but one outburst ended it all. T.J. Miller. T.J. Miller was Silicon Valley's wildcard. As Erlich Bachman, he stole scenes and gave the show its offbeat energy. Critics loved him. Audiences quoted him. He had the kind of breakout role that launches a career. But Miller's chaos didn't stay on screen. Allegations of misconduct, erratic behavior, and a bizarre false bomb threat incident torpedoed his reputation. HBO cut ties, and other studios followed. He tried to pivot back into stand-up, but the headlines kept following him. His career didn't fade from lack of talent. It collapsed under the weight of controversy. Miller had all the makings of a long-running comedy powerhouse, but instead, he became a warning about what happens when the chaos stops being funny. Lori Loughlin. Lori Loughlin was America's sweetheart for decades. From Full House to Fuller House, she built a brand around wholesomeness, the picture-perfect TV mom who aged into Hallmark royalty. Then came the college admissions scandal. When it was revealed she and her husband had paid hundreds of thousands to get their daughters into USC, everything collapsed. She was dropped by Hallmark, cut from Fuller House, and charged in the federal case. She served prison time, and when she got out, the offers didn't come back. The woman who'd spent decades as a symbol of moral family TV had destroyed her own brand. Loughlin didn't lose her fame. She lost her image, and for someone whose career was built on trust, that was fatal. Jeffrey Tambor. Jeffrey Tambor had a late career renaissance most actors dream about. He went from Arrested Development's offbeat patriarch to the groundbreaking, award-winning lead of Transparent. It was the kind of role that could have cemented him as a television legend, and for a while it did. Then, allegations of harassment on the Transparent set surfaced. Amazon removed him from the series, and the fallout spilled into Arrested Development's reunion press tour, where tensions became painfully public. The once revered actor became a polarizing figure almost overnight. Tambor's career didn't end from age or irrelevance. It ended because the industry that had just rediscovered him decided it couldn't stand behind him anymore. David Caruso. In the early 90s, David Caruso was TV's next big thing. NYPD Blue made him a household name, brooding, magnetic, and fresh off an Emmy nomination. The buzz around him was massive, and Hollywood came calling. So he did what many stars dream of. He left TV for film. The problem? The movies didn't work. Kiss of Death and Jade bombed, and suddenly the momentum was gone. By the time he returned to television years later with CSI Miami, the landscape had changed. That show gave him a comeback, but never the prestige he'd once had. Caruso's story is one of timing. He had the role that could have made him a legend, but he walked away too soon, chasing a movie career that never happened. Shelley Long. Shelley Long had one of the most beloved roles in sitcom history, Diane Chambers on Cheers. Her chemistry with Ted Danson, her comedic timing, it was lightning in a bottle. The show was unstoppable, and she was at the center of it. But after 5 seasons, she left to pursue a film career, and that's where it all went wrong. None of her movies connected the way Cheers did, and the film industry quickly moved on. By the time she tried to come back, the spotlight had moved with it. She reprised Diane years later, but the magic had passed. Shelley Long had the talent to be TV royalty, but leaving Cheers at its peak meant she never got to wear the crown. Mischa Barton. Mischa Barton was the face of early 2000s teen television. As Marissa Cooper on The OC, she was everywhere. Magazine covers, interviews, red carpets. She was young, famous, and had the perfect setup for crossover success. But behind the scenes, fame hit hard. There were reports of exhaustion, partying, and erratic behavior. She left the show before its final season, and her exit felt like watching a star walk off stage before the encore. Hollywood didn't wait. The roles stopped coming, and her attempt to pivot into film and indie projects fizzled. Mischa Barton had all the makings of a long career: beauty, presence, timing. But the early fame burned hotter than she could handle. Shannen Doherty. Shannen Doherty was the face of early 90s TV drama, first as Brenda Walsh on Beverly Hills, 90210, then later as Prue Halliwell on Charmed. She had attitude, screen presence, and the kind of charisma that made her unforgettable. But behind the scenes, trouble followed. Reports of constant conflict with co-stars and production staff turned her into tabloid gold and professional poison. She was fired from both shows at their peaks. Each time she tried to reinvent herself, but the reputation stuck. By the time Hollywood softened to her, the era that made her famous had passed. Shannen could have been the queen of primetime. Instead, she became the cautionary tale of what happens when the drama moves off-screen. Amanda Bynes. Amanda Bynes was a prodigy. From All That to The Amanda Show, she was Nickelodeon's golden child, funny, smart, and quick on her feet. When she transitioned into film, it worked. She's the Man, Hairspray, Easy A, all hits. She was on track to be one of the rare child stars who actually made it. Then everything fell apart. Erratic behavior, legal issues, and struggles with mental health pulled her out of the industry completely. By her mid-20s, she'd retired from acting and disappeared from Hollywood. It wasn't a scandal that ended her career. It was a breakdown that played out in public. She had everything a studio could want, but fame took more than it gave back. Drake Bell. Drake Bell was one of Nickelodeon's biggest stars. Drake and Josh was appointment TV, and he had the charm to transition into music and adult roles. But instead of evolving, his image collapsed. Legal issues piled up. DUIs, bankruptcy, and eventually a guilty plea for inappropriate contact with a minor. That last one ended everything. Nickelodeon wiped his legacy clean, and his name became radioactive overnight. Drake Bell could have been a nostalgia-era icon, the kind of star who turned childhood fame into long-term success. Instead, he became a reminder of how quickly a beloved figure can lose everything once the headlines change. Jeremy Piven. Jeremy Piven was airy gold. Entourage made him a household name, earning 3 Emmys and one of the most quotable roles in modern TV. He was electric, fast-talking, ruthless, hilarious, and it seemed like a sure gateway to movie stardom. But when Entourage ended, his career stumbled. His film attempts didn't land, and just as he tried to rebuild with Mr. Selfridge, allegations of sexual misconduct surfaced. The show ended, and Hollywood distanced itself. He denied the claims, but the damage was done. The man once seen as the ultimate Hollywood insider became the symbol of its darker side. Piven had the talent to pivot from TV to film legend, but the industry stopped answering his calls. Matthew Fox. For 6 seasons, Matthew Fox was the face of Lost. He was the heroic lead of one of the biggest shows on Earth, a global phenomenon that made him a star. He had the looks, the presence, the kind of serious gravitas that could have launched a massive second act in film. But after Lost, everything unraveled. A few failed movie attempts, a DUI arrest, and accusations of assault. All of it chipped away at his clean image. Hollywood cooled fast. By the time he returned in 2022 for a small TV project, most people didn't even realize he'd disappeared for almost a decade. Fox had everything lined up for a post-Lost career boom, but instead, he quietly became one of TV's great vanishings. Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase is a comedy legend. Saturday Night Live, National Lampoon's Vacation, Caddyshack. He defined an entire era. When he joined Community, it looked like the perfect late career revival, a chance to connect with a new generation. And for a while, it worked, until the old stories started repeating. Reports of fights with co-stars, racist remarks on set, and clashes with creator Dan Harmon piled up. By the time he left the show, the damage was done. He'd gone from being one of the most beloved comedians in America to someone almost no one wanted to work with. Chase had the chance to close his career with a victory lap. Instead, he proved every story about his ego right. Brett Butler. In the mid-1990s, Brett Butler was unstoppable. Grace Under Fire was pulling in millions of viewers every week, and she wasn't just the star, she was the heartbeat of the show. A sharp-tongued working-class single mom who actually felt real. But behind the scenes, everything was collapsing. Substance abuse, erratic behavior, and clashes with producers turned her set into chaos. By season 5, she was gone, and the show folded right after. For a while, she vanished completely, later admitting she'd been homeless. Every once in a while, she reappears. Small parts, guest roles, but the momentum never came back. Brett Butler could have been the queen of network comedy, but addiction took her crown before anyone could stop it. Stana Katic Castle was a hit. A sharp, charming procedural that worked because of one thing: chemistry. Nathan Fillion and Stana Katic were TV gold. Fans loved them, critics praised them, and for years it was steady success. Then came the reports. Tension on set, conflicts with producers, and a shocking firing before the final season. The show limped through one more year without her, then collapsed completely. Katic's exit didn't just end Castle. It tanked her career momentum. She's done indie work and smaller shows since, but nothing close to that level. Stana Katic had everything: talent, charisma, presence. But one messy off-screen feud cut her run short. Chris Noth. For decades, Chris Noth was TV royalty. Law and Order, Sex and the City, The Good Wife. He was the steady presence in hit after hit. Then, just as he was about to enjoy another wave of nostalgia from And Just Like That, everything imploded. Multiple sexual assault allegations surfaced, and overnight, his career evaporated. He was written out of future projects, dropped by his talent agency, and effectively blacklisted. It wasn't just a scandal, it was an erasure. For years, Noth played the charming, confident man audiences rooted for, but the real-life revelations made those roles feel hollow. He didn't just lose work, he lost the legacy he'd spent decades building. Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey wasn't just a TV actor, he was the actor. House of Cards revived his career, putting him at the top of Netflix's golden era of streaming. For years, he was untouchable. Critical acclaim, awards, power. Then came the avalanche. Accusations of sexual misconduct destroyed his career almost overnight. He was fired from House of Cards, erased from all the money in the world, and blacklisted across Hollywood. His public attempts at comebacks, the bizarre Christmas videos, the self-referential monologues, only made things worse. Spacey went from commanding rooms to being persona non grata. He had the kind of legacy actors dream of, and he torched it in one of the most catastrophic falls in entertainment history. Naya Rivera. Naya Rivera was magnetic. Her role as Santana Lopez on Glee was bold, emotional, and career-defining. A breakthrough for both representation and talent. Everyone expected her to explode beyond the show, but when Glee ended, things got messy. Public feuds with Lea Michele and Big Sean, legal trouble with her ex-husband, and a string of missed opportunities kept her in the headlines for the wrong reasons. Her later roles never matched the power of her Glee run. And then, tragedy struck. Her accidental drowning in 2020 cut everything short. Naya's career didn't collapse by scandal alone. It was a mix of chaos, timing, and a life lost far too soon. She could have been a multi-genre force. Instead, she became a haunting what if. Angus T. Jones. Angus T. Jones grew up on 2.5 Men, literally. He was the kid who watched his co-stars, Charlie Sheen and Jon Cryer, become sitcom giants while he became the highest-paid child actor on TV. But by the time he hit adulthood, he'd had enough. After a religious awakening, Jones publicly called the show filth and urged fans to stop watching it, while still under contract. CBS didn't take it lightly. His character was written out, and his acting career effectively ended. He stepped away from Hollywood entirely, saying the fame never made him happy. Jones didn't burn out, he walked out. But in doing so, he gave up one of the most stable and lucrative careers in television history, Topher Grace. Topher Grace was the heart of That 70s Show, charming, awkward, and relatable. When he left in 2005, it was supposed to be his movie star moment. Spider-Man 3, In Good Company, Predators. All lined up to make him the next crossover success. But none of them hit like they should have. Then the stories started coming out. People called him distant, hard to work with, even arrogant on set. Whether true or not, the perception stuck. When he tried to return to TV, audiences had already moved on. Topher Grace had all the makings of a lasting lead. Timing, talent, recognition. But he walked away from the role that made him and never found another that fit as perfectly. Wentworth Miller. Wentworth Miller was a phenomenon when Prison Break hit. That intense stare, the quiet genius. He became an overnight star and even earned Golden Globe attention. The show made him one of TV's most recognizable faces. But after Prison Break ended, everything slowed down. His movie roles, Resident Evil, Afterlife, The Loft, didn't land. and he quietly stepped away from the spotlight. Later, he opened up about depression and how fame had taken a heavy toll, which explained the retreat. Even when Prison Break returned years later, the buzz was gone. Miller had all the tools to become a top-tier actor: looks, talent, global recognition. But the spark faded fast, and Hollywood never really found another place for him. Evangeline Lilly. Evangeline Lilly went from total unknown to global fame as Kate Austen on Lost. She had the mystique, the fan base, and the screen presence to lead major projects. But after Lost, her relationship with fame soured. She said acting wasn't fulfilling, skipped auditions, and turned down big offers. Her return in The Hobbit and Ant-Man proved she could still draw attention, but her off-screen controversies, from anti-mask comments during the pandemic to divisive interviews, made her a PR headache. What could have been a long run as one of Hollywood's top names turned into a patchwork of sporadic appearances. Lilly had the talent and the legacy, but she kept stepping back right when the spotlight wanted her most. Teri Hatcher. Teri Hatcher was unstoppable in the mid-2000s. Desperate Housewives made her a global name again after Lois and Clark, earning Golden Globes, Emmys, and magazine covers everywhere. For a moment, she was the face of primetime television, but behind the scenes, it was chaos. Reports of feuds with castmates, diva behavior, and on-set tension started spreading fast. When Desperate Housewives ended, so did the offers. She tried smaller projects and even YouTube ventures, but the A-list shine never came back. Hatcher had one of the strongest comebacks in TV history, and then lost it all to bad press and burned relationships. Fame wasn't her problem. Staying likable in the industry was. Lauren Graham. Lauren Graham became TV royalty as Lorelai Gilmore, witty, charming, and endlessly relatable. Gilmore Girls made her a household name, and Parenthood proved she could anchor dramas too. But despite 2 major hits, her momentum stalled. Her film roles never broke through, her pilots kept getting canceled, and she struggled to find that third defining project. Even when Netflix revived Gilmore Girls, critics said she felt stuck playing the same character. Off-screen, she leaned into writing, not acting, quietly shifting away from Hollywood's center. Graham didn't crash, she just plateaued. For someone with that much talent and timing, staying in the middle felt like the biggest miss of all. David Duchovny. David Duchovny was the guy in the 90s. The X-Files turned him into a cultural icon, and his dry charisma made Fox Mulder one of TV's most beloved characters. But then came burnout, contract disputes, and years of tabloid chaos. His exit from the X-Files was messy, his film career never took off, and personal scandals, including rehab and a public divorce, kept stealing headlines. Californication gave him a second wind, but the role mirrored his own vices a little too closely. After that, the projects got smaller, the buzz quieter. Duchovny had everything: fame, credibility, and a cult following, but he couldn't outrun the baggage that came with it. Patrick Dempsey. Patrick Dempsey was the heartbeat of Grey's Anatomy. As Derek McDreamy Shepherd, he became one of the most recognizable faces on TV. But behind the scenes, things weren't so perfect. Reports surfaced of ego clashes, tension with Shonda Rhimes, and behavior that led to his exit from the show. His post-Grey's film career never took off, and even his supposed big-screen comeback with Bridget Jones's Baby barely made a ripple. He tried racing, passion projects, even smaller European productions. Nothing hit the same. Dempsey had that rare blend of looks and talent that could have made him a long-term lead. But once Grey's ended, Hollywood seemed to move on without him. Kiefer Sutherland. Kiefer Sutherland owned the 2000s as Jack Bauer. 24 turned him into an action icon. Intense, stoic, and unstoppable. The show made him one of TV's highest-paid actors and won him an Emmy. But once 24 ended, his momentum faded fast. His follow-up series, Touch, Designated Survivor, The Fugitive, all fizzled out, unable to recapture that same energy. Off-screen, his reputation took hits too. Multiple DUIs, bar fights, and a difficult-to-work-with label that scared off studios. He tried to reinvent himself as a musician, but it never broke through. Sutherland had the perfect setup to transition into film legend status. But instead, he became a reminder of how one role can define and trap you at the same time. Kirstie Alley. Kirstie Alley was unstoppable in the late 80s and early 90s. Cheers made her a household name, and her sharp comedic timing carried into Veronica's Closet and Look Who's Talking. But after that, things unraveled. Her weight struggles became late-night punchlines, and her attempts to turn them into reality shows, Fat Actress, Kirstie Alley's Big Life, only made it worse. Then came the controversies, public rants, feuds, and her outspoken Scientology views, which alienated a huge part of her fan base. By the time she tried comebacks, networks weren't interested. Alley had natural charisma and comedy instincts most actors would kill for, but her off-screen choices drowned out the work. She didn't just lose Hollywood's trust. She lost the goodwill that made her special. Mandy Patinkin. Mandy Patinkin has one of the most distinct careers in TV. Always brilliant, always brief. He stunned audiences and Criminal Minds, but quit after 2 seasons, calling it too disturbing. Years later, he did it again with Homeland, leaving before the show ended despite being a fan favorite. His reputation for walking away grew louder than his performances. Behind the scenes, castmates described him as intense and impossible to please. Every time he built momentum, he'd vanish again. Patinkin's talent isn't the question. Few actors can match his screen presence. But his pattern of exits kept him from ever becoming a true TV legend. He didn't get canceled or forgotten. He just couldn't stay still long enough to claim the crown. Calista Flockhart. Calista Flockhart defined late 90s television. Ally McBeal wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural moment. Her quirky, razor-sharp performance made her a star and won her a Golden Globe. But when the show ended, her career went quiet fast. She avoided big roles, skipped the movie offers, and mostly stepped back from Hollywood life. When she returned in Brothers and Sisters, it was strong, but short-lived. Most of her visibility after that came from her marriage to Harrison Ford, not her acting. She had the talent, the recognition, and the platform to dominate for decades, but she never capitalized. Flockhart didn't fall from grace. She just walked away before the industry was done with her. David Schwimmer. David Schwimmer became world famous as Ross Geller on Friends. He was funny, neurotic, and unforgettable, a role that made him one of TV's biggest stars. But when Friends ended, he couldn't shake it off. His movie choices, Apt Pupil, 6 Days, 7 Nights, Run Fat Boy Run, all underperformed, and he slowly retreated behind the camera. He built a solid directing career, but as an actor, he never found another Ross-level hit. Even in later projects like Intelligence or American Crime Story, audiences saw Ross trying to be serious. Schwimmer had the name, the network, and the skill. But Friends was both his making and his ceiling. Once it ended, so did his shot at true TV legend status.